Hey, Judy. Can you hear me, Judy?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. I can hear you perfectly. So Cole's in here with me, who's part of the Prather team. And so I'm just, troubleshooting with him for a quick second. They're right here, Cole. I can see where I could jump in and actually be able to mute or unmute.
I can't do that because you're on like the main account or whatever.
Okay. Hey, Tim Norris. He's not showing a microphone. Oh, there he is. Tim, just seeing if you can come off mute just to make sure it's working for you, that you can see if you got voice connectivity.
Yes, sir.
There you go. How you doing, buddy?
I'm pretty good. You?
Doing well, doing well. You swinging and decking?
Yeah.
Never a dull moment, right? Hi, Rebecca. I see you on here, so that's great. Hey, Miles, Michael Prather, thanks for joining in today. We're just letting people start to continue to trickle on. So Judy, as we're just waiting for people to jump on here with us, I'm going to see if you've had a chance to read through the document a little bit and give me your initial thoughts and ahas about it.
Yeah, I just finished reading through it, and I think it sounds like a great idea for talking. It's a good starter to say, hey, that you can sell your house now and have time to find your new house before, but so we can find you a new house and you still have yours under contract. And I think that's pretty cool.
It just really gives us the opportunity, to your exact point, to answer that big, concern of people that they just do not want to be homeless. And there's just very little inventory out there. And, we've got to gain their trust that this form allows them, per 1B, this agreement is contingent on seller's ability to close on replacement property. So
Right.
The one video, when you get a second, if you'll go find me on Facebook, that there's a video that I want you to watch, that the wall there in our conference room, it's got the sold sign, the neon sold sign, and the boxwood.
Okay.
So the gentleman, I'm sitting there with a guy, and he's got on a red sweatshirt, and he's a past client that we use this form with. And I don't want to, go into the long conversation, but just go watch that video. And Miles, I don't know if you've had a chance to see that video too, but it's a real life, past client that they just had a baby, and they were just, scared to death to put their house on the market, and list it and get, under contract quickly, and then have no place to go. And it took a little time to gain their trust, to get them to go on the market. And we eventually got them under contract to then get them under contract to buy another house. And if you'll just go watch that video, Judy, it answers a lot of the questions and the benefits of this form. So.
And there, Cole put out the, okay.
Yeah,
Very
yeah. Look at there, Cole's on it. He's putting out the video. My man. So Miles, talk to me, buddy. What do you know about this form, and what thoughts and questions, and have you used it yet?
No, not much. I'm here to learn. I'm here to listen.
Okay, good. Well, and we'll continue to really at a market center level, really start teaching this as well. We got Maria Ganas on here, who is a broker as well. And so these are the continued folks that we all want to be teaching here, at the market center level, so we can really get, everybody understanding this form and then be able to put it, absolutely, into practice. Because this is such a great tool, Miles, for you to be able to use on, listing appointments. You're calling FISBOs, for example, and they're like, hey, we're just tire kicking right now, trying to, see what can happen. Because we know if we put this in the hands of a trusted real estate professional, this sucker is going to probably sell fast and sell with multiple offers. And then what do?
Yeah.
Well, more of the reason to get with a trusted real estate professional, because I've got this document, that can in turn, give you some protection. We'll just wait and see, who else joins on, but just kind of looking through our roster right now. This is KW Peeps, which is still great. And the first thing to do to me is really understand that this form is a counter offer from a seller. So I had Cheyenne McBride, she's got her first listing here in our office. And so she was calling me today saying, hey, I need you to help me fill this form out so I can include it with my listing. And I'm like, well, there's the first piece of understanding that we've got to really help everybody know that you're going to just very simply document in the listing. And I think the best place to put it is that we just put it in agent remarks, because I think it would probably become very confusing if we try to put it in the marketing comments of a listing, that we just put it in the agent remarks that the name of this addendum, seller's purchase of replacement property addendum, must accompany a fully agreed upon and signed purchase contract. So we're just very simply putting the agent on notice that we intend on this form to be part of our sale. And so this is where us agents need to be able to start looking at agent remarks and paying attention to everything, that if all of a sudden we've got a buyer and they're ready to pay cash and close in 1 week and they need possession, then they probably shouldn't even go show this property, or they just need to know very quickly, they need to pick the phone up and call the listing agent and say, hey, my folks need to be in somewhere right now, what say you? And you can have, hold on, Maria, you can have a seller that says, you know what, for the right dollar amount, I'll go live in a Motel 8 for a little while. But it just allows you to start to get into conversation. So Maria.
Okay, so what I was going to say, I did read over it. I didn't like sit and study it the other day after you and I talked, Michael. I think that this form would be, it's not like a last resort, because what I think the intention of this form is to get more listings on the market, to give a seller a little bit of peace of mind that they're not going to be homeless should their house sell in a day and they can't find another house. But as a listing agent, I think that I would probably see what options my seller has. And if they have no other options, then maybe introduce this as a possibility. Because if my seller has the option of either going to live with a family member, or, if they're moving out of state, you probably don't need this if they're moving out of state. We as agents need to know when we need to introduce this form. And then I feel like we all need to really understand it so that we can explain it. Because if you start mumbling around about what its intention is, then I think you can kind of like give them a little fear factor. So I do think we need to have either, in some classes on this form and how best to use it, when to introduce it, how to introduce it, and so on. Have you actually used it yet, Michael? Have you
Absolutely.
used it? Okay.
So the video link that Cole's put there in the chat, Maria,
Let me see if I can find that.
you see the chat there?
I see the chat.
So just click on that and it's going to launch that video in Facebook. And you
Okay.
can watch it after this call.
Okay,
And so to kind of give you guys the steps that we've been going down is, first we went about, talking with Elbar to say, hey, we got to do something different. We got to create, this form, which we've done. The next step, to your point, Maria, is we've got to go teach everybody, just like any form we have in Elbar, how to use it. Because to your point, if we're the professionals and we're fumbling through it in conversation and, can't answer the questions or don't quite understand it, then the consumer doesn't have confidence to use it, right?
right.
And, the biggest challenge is we just have not embraced this form as an association, as an office and as individuals for the powerful, advantages it has. And it just all goes back to, you have objections and you have stalls. If you guys, go back to sales 101, stalls are things that you cannot overcome. A stall would be, hey, I'm going to buy a house as soon as I get a new job in your area, because I'm moving from out of state, that I can get approved for a loan. You can't overcome that objection, right? So an objection you can't overcome, a stall you cannot overcome. An objection you can. So the objection is, I would love to sell, but I don't want to be homeless, right? That's the objection. So then we get creative. Okay, how do we go fix that? And this form starts to address, it's back to the old adage. How do you get, 4,000 realtors on the same page? Is you just get one page, which is this form. So maybe we just read through this for a second and then really start to come to how we're going to use it, because the people in that video, Maria, you'll watch it, they were this exact reason. They had a house that they needed to sell that they did not want to put on the market because there was nothing to buy. We had gone through maybe 2 or 3 multiple offers trying to help them buy. And if they're in a multiple offer situation and their contract's contingent upon them needing to sell a house that's not even on the market yet,
Yeah,
they're dead in the water, right?
Right.
And so we were explaining this to them and they just couldn't get their minds around it. So finally, one of my sales team members was working with them, and I just thought, well, daggone, it's just, Sheldon's just not able to get them to understand this form. So then I started to engage them, and it took me about a week and a half, 2 weeks to gain their trust for them to finally understand. I mean, it's a trust thing. They just had a baby. They're like, I just don't get it. You want me to put my house on the market, get it under contract with somebody, and I get to stay in my house until we find a house that we want, and it's open-ended, that if I don't find a house that I'm happy about, I don't have to sell them my house. I'm like, yes, that's exactly what this form means. And so finally we got them to take the leap of faith that, it just very simply states that this is going to be your counter offer. So as a seller, you are going to get an offer in. You're not going to pre-fill this out because we don't have an offer yet to know how to even engage, the buyer of what their needs are. Because I've had a seller too that we went to them, same thing. Hey, we got this form. We ended up getting an offer that we negotiated that gave them 90 days until we closed. And then we had a 30-day post occupancy that they're like, if we can't find another house in Michigan in that extra time frame, we'll just go rent something. Because to your point, Maria, we took them down the path and said, let's look at all your options. Let's look at worst case scenario. Can you go live with family? Can you go get in a short-term or long-term rental? What are all your options? And we have this as just another, option to have conversation with to get them to get on the market. That's all we're trying to do, right? So I was not on the task committee that came up with this form. This was a group of people at Elbar that Justin put together, and they flushed it out multiple times to come up with what we have. And, 1A just very simply states, that the seller's obligation to sell under the terms of the above referenced contract. So we've got a contract, we got an offer, is subject to the seller entering into a contract to purchase or lease replacement property no later than the replacement date. And that could be whatever time frame you want it to be, right? So that's all negotiable.
Hey, Michael,
Yes.
do you have that form blank in your dot loop in somewhere where you could share that form so you're just not reading to us? Like share your screen? I don't know if you know how to do that.
Can you send me, let me see if I can find it. Can you put the seller replacement property in the chat like you did the video?
Well, either in the chat or if it's already in dot loop, you can open dot loop and share your screen, because that's how I teach a bunch of my classes. I have the people in the class over here, and then I share my screen, and then I put up my dot loop. And then that way it's big print, we can see it, and it's easier to follow and even ask you some
Yeah,
questions.
let me go do it this way. It's in Facebook as well.
Mhm.
But we are going to.
I saw it on Facebook this morning.
Here, I got it right here. I'm gonna just do a screen share.
So, as you and I were talking the other day, and while you're doing that, I'm just gonna talk for a minute. You were saying, and it's very true, that this is the reverse of somebody's, there it is, of somebody selling a house contingent on their house selling.
That's
It's
right.
the reverse of that. A buyer makes an offer, and that, used to be, we haven't seen a whole lot of that. Hey, I want to buy your house, but I can't buy it until my house sells. So is there an escape clause here if you get another offer?
Yep. So
Okay.
you guys can see my screen right here. Sellers purchase of replacement property addendum, right?
Right.
So seller's obligation to sell under the terms of the above referenced contract to purchase or lease no later than this date. Seller shall have total and complete discretion with respect to the location, value, condition, blah, 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 right? So this and B, to me, if checked, B is always going to be checked, which this is the whole crux of it. This agreement is contingent on the seller's ability to close on the replacement property. So if you want to give your client 100%, trust and comfort that they will not have to sell their house and be homeless, we got to have B checked. If they say, hey, we're going to roll the dice and say, we're going to give the buyer 90 days, we've got to find something no later than 90 days out. That would be the other use of this, because they say, okay, give us 90 days, and if we can't find something, then heck, we'll go ahead and close and vacate. Most people are still going to want the comfort that they've absolutely got to find a replacement property and have something under contract that they're going to close. The seller, right here, right to cancel, seller should have complete discretion with respect to the selection, acquisition of the replacement addendum, and in the event seller has not secured replacement property by the replacement date, the seller may cancel the offer to purchase by providing buyer or buyer's agent. And this is one thing that I didn't like about this, but I wasn't involved in the committee. We're not communicating to the buyer, it's the buyer's agent. But the only thing that I would go back and say to this is, like, if it's a unrepresented buyer, then you'd be communicating to the buyer, right? It's almost like a FSBO buyer. So that's kind of the mindset behind it.
Yeah.
So we give them written notice no later than 6 p.m. of this date, and then earnest money shall be released. And this written notice shall operate as a mutual release. So you don't have to go get a release. This acts as the release as well. Okay.
Well, you may have to get that. You may have to talk about it talks here about the earnest money. So whereupon the earnest money deposit shall be released by the buyer. You might want to ask Myrna if that release is a require, I don't know if it's required. Maybe it's not even required, but
Elmar believes that, the reason they wrote this in here is that earnest money shall be released to buyer, because that's what that form says is, where's the money going? It's instructing the broker to release it, and who's the go-to. And so this, suffices for that.
I hope so.
The
Yeah,
nitty gritties of that, we could talk about it another time, and you can talk to Myrna offline and get her opinion.
yeah,
But yet this was written by attorneys from Elbar, so I'm gonna stick with it for this conversation's sake.
yeah.
Seller's failure to cancel. If the seller fails to provide timely written notice of intent to cancel, then seller shall be deemed to have waived all rights afforded by this addendum, and the offer to purchase contract shall be in full force and effect. So if they don't have this box checked, and by February the 28th, they don't alert them by 6 p.m., then this addendum in essence is, out of play now. Now we're moving forward with whatever that purchase contract states, the honor close date is, the possession date is, all that stays in
Mhm.
effect, right? So some folks that have had a challenge with this form, they're like, well, what about the poor buyer? They don't have any rights. They're giving up all their rights. And I'm like, well, we'll address that in item number 4, but think about this for a second. You'll go watch that video that we posted, the folks that needed to sell a house that didn't have anything yet. They were in multiple offers without their house on the market. They were in no position to negotiate and win a multiple offer bid, right? They had a buyer that came along that was getting a VA loan, which is not favorable in multiple offer situations. They needed closing cost, which our folks rolled about $7,000 into closing cost. VA loans require the seller to pay for a pest inspection. VAs also have an appraisal that it did come back and said they had to install a handrail. So all these things that just never bode well for a buyer in a multiple offer, that buyer was getting beat out in multiple offer situations left and right. What that buyer did have over everybody else is he was willing to let us use this replacement property addendum as our counteroffer. So now it started to even the playing field. It's going to allow buyers to buy that normally couldn't buy in this market too, right? So the great thing is if checked, buyer's right to cancel. So buyer may at any time prior to the replacement property date, give the seller or seller's agent written notice of buyer's intent to cancel, and seller shall have whatever amount of hours from the time this said notice is received by seller or seller's agent to remove this replacement contingency from the contract, in essence, move forward. So what this means is the buyer can go under contract with the seller if the seller has the replacement property addendum, and then they can keep looking for their next house. That if they find something that is equal to, greater, or maybe not as great, but it's not requiring a replacement property addendum, and they can move forward with seller number 2, they can come back to this person and say, hey, we're backing out of that contract because we don't know if we're truly ever going to be able to close on your property. So we're going to go get the other one. And then it forces the seller to go, well, you know what? We don't want to lose you. So we'll remove our addendum here and we'll move forward with purchasing. So it's giving both parties, some rights. It gives flexibility and fairness in both directions. So if seller fails to remove the replacement contingency, then the contract shall be void with the earnest money deposit being returned to the buyer and operates as this mutual agreement. So
Hey,
same
Michael.
thing.
How many hours do you typically think should be on that?
So let's talk through this because the answer is different depending on who I'm representing. So if I'm representing the buyer, I'm going to fill this out and say the seller shall have 1 hour, 2 hours, a very short period of time. That's
Right.
like you sending an offer in nowadays that we used to put in there and give sellers 24 to 48 hours, to respond to our offer. Now we want to give them like 24 minutes because you're afraid there might be multiple offers that come in, right?
Right.
So if you're representing the buyer, you want this to be as tight as possible. So the seller has to make a quick decision because you don't want your buyer client to miss out on any potential other property they're trying to buy. So it would be the same thing as, when people tell you nowadays that they want to put in a kick-out clause on, and people don't even, you don't even allow kick-out clauses, it seems like nowadays. with buyers having a contingent to sell and close. And agents still are asking, hey, can we get 24 hours or 48 hours on the kick out? No, that would damage the seller. We've got to make that a very short timeline. Does all that make sense?
Mhm.
If we're representing the
what would be-
seller, if we're representing the seller, I'd try to get 24 or 48 hours. You want to give them as much time as possible to keep this person in this agreement. Go ahead, Maria.
What would be nice, especially for new agents, would be to somewhere in this language or, like right at the end of this sentence or something, to say, see notification of intent to cancel or form number, blah, blah, blah. Because we as agents, where I can see an agent getting in a little bit of trouble in any of this stuff is if you're not using the proper forms or you miss your timeline or something like that, so we have to be kind of Johnny on the spot because you can make people mad that hey, so what form do I use? What do I need to release them with? What do I need? So it would have been nice for whoever created this, or maybe the next version of this, to have, C form number, blah, 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 because there are forms already there for us to notify the seller or notify the buyer that another contract has come in, et cetera, et cetera. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And I think, to your point, first, iteration of this, they're just saying, put it in writing. And in writing, to me, guys, is no less than an email. Texting, I'm sure, is time dated and stamped and can serve as, but email is your official in writing in this day and age, because it's instantaneous that you can ship it over and find it. It's just more professional. Texting is informal, quick communications, behind the scenes. Email is, more official, that you just send an email and say, my client's intent is, email sent, it's dated and timed right there, and very easy to understand. So that's all I would, recommend on that. And then also, anytime you guys are emailing and dot looping documents back and forth between your fellow agents, pick the phone up and call them and let them know of what you've just sent. I just sent you an email. I just shared an offer with you through dotloop. I've just sent you, requested repairs through dotloop. Always just take the extra step and communicate, with your fellow agent of what steps you've just done. Because if you have a lot of business going on, sometimes these emails get missed and people will call and say, man, are you going to respond to that offer we sent you 2 days ago? Holy cow, right? So that's kind of my public service announcement between us fellow agents. Communicate often and early. 4B, time periods in the offer to purchase contract for inspections, contingencies, covenants, and other obligations that commence from date of acceptance shall begin the day after seller delivers to buyer written notice of removing the identifying replacement property contingency specified in 1A. So they're saying, hey, we got to go specify the property, because what we're doing, this has been an objection early on in this form. Well, why on earth would I have my buyer client go spend money on inspections and appraisals and all that stuff if they're not going to be able to 100% know if they're going to buy this property or not? And they don't have to. We just tell them to put the brakes on appraisals, inspections, anything that's going to cost them money until the seller comes back and say, hey, we have identified a property. And so now we're all going to start moving forward with repairs, appraisals. My opinion, I think you push forward the seller of this and let them get their inspections done. Let them get their appraisals. We're still going to have plenty of time to process on our own, but make sure the deal doesn't fall apart during inspections and appraisal on this, because they're still not under any obligation to close with you until they've completely, removed 1A and 1B. Okay. So it says, if checked, remain as specified in the offer to purchase. So this is where you could also, have written in, offer to purchase that, hey, we don't care. We're going to push forward with getting inspections and repairs. Just as, our timelines are going to be tight anyway. And we've had one deal that the seller agreed upon that, yes, let's push forward because I want to know that you're going to buy my house and that you're not going to back out during in repair negotiations. And the seller said, we'll pay for the inspector's report and inspection if you back out. And so, there's a lot of ways we can negotiate these things. And that's what you might have specified differently on the offer to purchase. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so then closing, buyer and seller agree that the seller may extend the closing date as specified in the offer to purchase contract for the sale of the seller's property for a maximum of, X amount of days, or if checked, until a drop dead date by providing buyer with written notice at the time seller removes the identifying replacement property contingency specified in paragraph 1. So they're saying we can go tell them, hey, we found another property and we're looking good. So we're going to throw this out now 30 to 45 days, just like they've gotten the offer for the very first time, right? Because that's when the clock really starts now that they've identified their replacement property, that now we can start moving forward like it's a normal contract. They got something identified, they're moving into inspections, repairs, appraisals, and we're throwing a date out into the future that everybody can start working towards. So Jeff Green, who was on this forum, we were kicking stuff around, he had 7 deals that were all, chain reaction. And those 7 deals came about because the very first seller was willing to go to the market with this seller replacement property addendum. So guys, I'm not saying this is not going to be messy at some point in time, but we're dealing with real estate people, finance, inspections, repairs. Real estate by its nature is very, very complicated and messy, right? But we gotta jump in here and start to move people around and use this form as a solution. And then at any time, we have questions, because we're largely, just kind of looking through who's on this call. It's KW peeps. Come to me, come to Maria, come to your broker, Myrna, and we can talk through these things. Okay? So Maria, what initial thoughts or questions are popping up?
Well, I do think that it is a tool to give a seller, the comfort zone of getting on the market. As far as the inspections for getting a buyer that's ready, willing, and able now may be tough. If to take that on, they may keep looking, but I think you're right that those buyers that continuously lose out because they have to get a conventional loan or they have to get an FHA loan or whatever, those guys are probably going to be like, okay, I'll risk that. I'll risk the seller not finding something else. The ready, get set, go cash people, they're probably not going to engage. The buyers are probably not going to engage. That's just me thinking.
Yeah, I agree. And
yeah.
what I will say to that is those buyers weren't your buyer anyway, because you can't sell to them. You need this addendum. You need to find a replacement property. And I've had conversations with agents, and they're like, because once again, as an industry, as an association, as a realtor base, we have not gone out to educate everybody of how to use this form and what the talk track needs to sound like. So Kendra Woods is who I'm talking about. She was like, Michael, it was a bad experience because everybody that brought me offers, they wouldn't allow us to use this addendum. And the sellers were just so upset, that it didn't happen the way I told them it was going to happen. And I'm like, Kenya, those buyers were not your buyers. You would have never even had a conversation with those buyers if you wouldn't have been on the market for them to even see you. And
Yeah.
so that's fine. Let them move on. Go find the people that will give you this option because they're your player. And that's what we got to do. We got to open up the market that starts bringing buyers and sellers that normally wouldn't have a chance to enter the market to come play. It's only for the, the elite few at the moment that can pay cash and can move and have a family to go live in with or whatever the case is, right?
Well, and to try not to disappoint a seller, like, you said her sellers were disappointed because the form didn't meet up to what their head conjured up in their head that it was going to do, because the
Yep.
buyers wouldn't let it, whatever. You really have to educate your seller as to that being, what could happen. I mean, you could get 10 offers and nobody wants to play with you with that form. So don't get mad at me, the agent. We're going to find that buyer that is going to want to play with you. It may not be this first 5 people. It may not be the next 6 people. But if you're not willing to just sell your house and move, then, that this is the form that gives you the opportunity to test this market. And so really you got to make it more of a hey, don't think that we're going to get every buyer to buy into this form,
But
because
here's
they
the
want to
thing.
move.
Here's the thing. The more that we can get to buy into this form, that behind me, you probably can't see it very well, but there's a bunch of little red houses I've drawn. And the more houses we get to the market because of this form, the more opportunities that seller is going to find a house quicker, that they can then go to the potential buyer to their house and say, hey, I've identified something that I want to buy. So work with me just for a very short period of time. You want to buy my house? I want to buy somebody else's. And so that's what's so daggone important about us having this conversation and getting our entire realtor base, understood on this form and using it, is it works at the highest level that it's intended to, the more inventory we get to the market, right?
See those little red houses that you had, very light red, the
Yep.
invisible market, which is really what it is. It's the invisible market. It's all those sellers out there that are like, God, I wish I could sell my house, but I'm scared that I'm not going to find a house. So this form is sort of opening a door so that invisible market comes to become a visible market. And it's kind of like that wave. Woo,
Yeah. I'm
It's like-
gonna have Cole put in the chat right here the next video that I want you to watch. So the first video you see there, and you can see it down in the chat, right?
Let's see. Seller's purchase of replacement. I see that like a PDF.
Yep, go up above that. It came in at
Yeah, I see the
304.
video, the link.
All right, just click on that and it'll launch to a web browser and it'll just sit off to the side.
You want me to do that now?
Yeah, and you can just put, pause on it, but I just want you to launch it so you have it up, because once we end this call, it won't be there.
Oh, I see.
Okay?
Okay.
And
I
then once-
see you. You're wearing a blue shirt and he's wearing a red shirt.
Yep, so just leave that sitting there, okay?
Uh-huh.
Now I want you.
Now I
Judy,
got to
want-
figure out how to get back to us. Let's see. There we are.
All right, so
Okay.
Judy, I want you to do the same thing, please, ma'am. Go
Yeah, I
launch.
already-
You've already
Yep.
done it?
I've already done it.
All right, now I want both you ladies to scroll down to the last link at 339 that Cole just put in and click
Mhm.
on that link. And that's the
Got it.
second video that Kennedy and I shot last Friday.
Mhm.
And if you two ladies, everybody on here will go, and these are nothing more than links from our Facebook page, is how you can find them another way. We're just trying to serve it up and make it as simple as possible. If Maria and Judy, if you two ladies will do me the huge favor and give me a half an hour of your time, because both of those videos together are about a half an hour. And I think that
Okay.
they're going to be hugely instrumental in helping bring some pieces of this whole conversation together, because Maria, those red houses on the video from Friday, I call it the invisible inventory that you just called it. And
Oh,
you are 100% correct. We've
Yeah.
got, I believe there's so much invisible inventory out there that what we talked about on that call is, as of last week, last Friday, there were only 92 active listings in Fayette County. that if you had that cash buyer that needs to buy something and move in right now, this was not considering new construction or anything that's, down the road. This is ready, active listings that were single family houses, not townhouses, not condos, just single family. In Scott
Yeah.
County, it was only 27. And in Madison County, it's 55. My personal team has that many buyers that were looking for properties. And that's just one team, right? And so if we think about 4,000 realtors in our association, 2,000 of them live in Fayette County. And I guarantee you what you'll hear on this video that I know that all 2,000 of them know one person that they've talked to that they said we would love to sell, but there's nothing to buy and I don't want to be homeless. So if we can all go get one of those listings, use this form, help them understand they're not going to be homeless to bring it to the market, we would go from 92 listings to 2,000, right? So that's what we're trying to create. And this form, that the intention is not for us to do it one time. It's for us to continue, because I don't think we're going to correct our inventory issues for another year or 2 or 3. We are so far behind from a new construction standpoint that we can't catch up with how many houses the market is demanding, right? Construction
Well,
costs are up
yeah.
here. The ability to build houses right now is completely strained. So the only way we're going to start to balance out this market is get existing homes to the marketplace. And
Right.
this form is so genius that it's just scary of how simple it is too, if we can all just get our minds around it and go promote it. But it's going to take all of us to really get into conversation with every agent we come across, every client we come across, everybody. I'm talking to my financial planner. I'm like, how many houses do you think are on the market active in Fayette County to buy? He told me, oh, probably, a couple thousand. I'm like, how about 92? So you got to go educate everybody you come across, send them this seller replacement property addendum and say, hey, just keep this in your back pocket, because everybody talks about real estate. And when people have these conversations, we just very simply want them to say, you know what? Call Maria Ganas or call Miles, call Judy, call anybody on this call, because they've told me about this form that they've just rolled out that gives people a solution. That's the kind of groundswell we've got to have in order to make this work. So, questions, thoughts? Judy, talk to me.
I'm excited about trying this on some people who've been telling me this. So I'm going to talk to them.
Awesome.
A lot of people who've told me we just don't have any place to go.
It's the absolute same conversation we're all hearing. And it's just, it's what we see on social media from everybody, yet we're not doing anything any different than what we've always done. And that's the definition of insanity, right?
Right.
So-
And I some buyers who are VA loans, and I've been just worried to death about them because I just don't think there's any way they're going to get a house. And so this might be another opportunity for them to be able to get into a house if we start seeing this addendum show up in listings.